I remember probably like 1969, living in Chicago. My aunt Mandy, who was my mother's older sister, carried me to a gospel concert at DuSable High School there in Chicago to see Clarence Fountain and the Blind Boys, um, the Violinaires, and I think the Soul Stirrers, but it was the Salem Travelers Anniversary, who was a well-known gospel group there in Chicago. And I just remember as a small child, man, sitting like close to the front, watching Clarence Fountain and the Blind Boys like coming close to the edge of the stage and singing. And I'm sitting there thinking, this man's supposed to be blind. He's probably gonna fall off stage. But they were moving and doing what they do, man. They had everything coordinated, and saw the Violinaires, and Blair, and Lil Shot, who at that time was one of the more popular gospel groups. And I just knew then when I left, man, I said, I don't know how or what, but this is probably what I want to do. And then living back and forth down south in Grand Junction with my grandmother, and back and forth to Chicago and stuff, with my aunt, and just knowing, man, just loving gospel music and loving music, period, listening to records and stuff. Then later on in the '70s, I met a man, my stepfather sang in a gospel group there in Grand Junction called the Four Stars, and then I met a gentleman by the name of Bob Golden, who had a local radio show that I started hanging out with and following behind, going to the radio station, end up from there to my family on the other side, the Cheers family, in their gospel group, which at that time was the Gospel Songbirds. And starting out singing with my cousins Junior and Randy and Anthony and Rodney and Mark and Janice and Annie. We were singing like at children's programs, Easter, and at churches and stuff. And as we grew to be teenagers, then we turned out to be the musicians for the group during the transition period, because the group started recording big records and stuff, and some of the older guys that were playing decided that it wasn't what they wanted to do, so it left the group without musicians. So therefore, the younger guys, we kind of trained and learned ourselves how to play, so we became the musicians for the group, which at that time in the late 80s and the early 90s recorded a record with the Williams Brothers on the Blackberry label. And the Williams Brothers, I guess, decided to, give a name of the group a more marketable name, and they decided to name the group Reverend Andrew Cheers and the Songbirds. And I've done that for a long time, man, throughout all the 80s and the 90s, all the way up into the 2000s. I met a gentleman by the name of Glenn Jones in 1998, who at that time was had some big R&B records out. We became friends, and when I decided to step away from the gospel group, not necessarily leave, because I always played, in church at St. Paul there, and I still do, I started traveling and working with Glenn, met a lot of different artists, went from there to working with Dave Hollister, Calvin Richardson, Lenny Williams, Tony Terry, Sherelle, just a lot of people, man, just meeting people. Howard Hewitt, met Charlie Wilson, then started doing wrestling with Corey Macklin and Jerry Lawler, went from that to wrestling promotions, went from that to working with the Barcades with Larry Dodson and James Alexander, who at that time was doing the Masters of Funk tour. Well, United We Funk, then the United We Funk All-Stars, and went from there to the Funk Legends, and from the Funk Legends to the Masters of Funk. I did that for a few years, and I just decided, I got into the production thing and started trying to be an independent booking agency, and which is basically kind of what I do now, is how I make a living. I do a little bit of that, but I do the production. And when I started learning how to oversee the production and working with the different sound companies and stuff, I started working God blessed me just to be able to reach out and to branch out and work with a lot of A-list artists like Keith Sweat, Anthony Hamilton, and on the rap side, Yo Gotti and Rick Ross, and just a lot of different people, you know. So I kind of been very fortunate, but I've been doing it a long time. I got into radio at an early age, like I say, doing gospel when I was 12, 13 years old with Bob Golden and Reverend Cheers. And, you know, that's just kind of what I've been doing. I met my friend, my good friend, John Faulkner, who at that time was DJ, JFaulk, legendary JFaulk in the Holly Springs area. We became friends, hooked up, got on the radio together, and just kind of gelled, became real good friends, and had a good chemistry, man. And we just decided to keep doing what we do, you know.
And Danny came in, was part of the staff. Now I had met Danny some years before that in the quartet field, because I had sang some quartet myself with my father, who had sang for some 45 years before he passed in 2007. And so it was like a reuniting me and Danny when he came in and to work at the local radio station. And I had a show, midday show there here at the station, and I asked Danny to join in with me and be a part of the show. So he came in riding shotgun, and I guess the rest of the history.
Macy and I met when we were little boys in 1979. We've been the best of friends ever since. Just everybody, man, you know. I knew Willie Banks and Pilgrim Julie, Slim, Spencer Taylor, and just Willie Neal Johnson was my favorite cat. You know, he's always full of life, gave me a lot of encouragement, thought very highly of me. You know, when he would see me, he would have a lot of good things to say about me, give me a lot of encouraging words. And you know, I knew all of them. A lot of the contemporary gospel artists like Vanessa Bell Armstrong, and I remember Kirk Franklin when he was starting out. You know, he was a choir director and pianist for the Georgia Mass Choir. A lot of the R&B singers that started in gospel, Casey and JoJo. Back then they were Little Cedric and the Haleys. Calvin Richardson, who actually sang backup for them. You know, like I said, the Lord just blessed me, put me in a good place. I met a lot of good people, and when I started doing the R&B and the blues thing, I guess I can credit that to kind of, I was working with a guy doing promotions with Bradcom Entertainment, with John Bradshaw and Corey Coates, and they were doing the hip-hop shows, and this was during the time when T.I. and Lil Wayne and Franchise Boys and all those cats, Jeezy and them was just starting, like in the early 2000s. And I got a chance to tour with them. We did like about 8 dates with it was T.I.'s tour, and it was Jeezy, Wayne, Franchise Boys. Met a lot of those guys. They were young, you know, doing what they do. I was trying to fit in, you know, wanting to be learn the business or whatever and fit in and stuff. So that was an experience, hanging with them and doing a lot of stuff with them. Then I became friends in probably 2004, 2005 with Willie Clayton. You know, we became very close friends. I started working for him a few years afterwards, you know, and traveling on what they call the Southern Soul and the Blues circuit. You know, I got to meet Mel Waiters and Sir Charles, and of course I met Bobby Rush years ago when I was in college at Russ. Just kind of reacquainted myself with him, TK Soul, a lot of the new guys. Then a couple of guys that I've been working with in gospel kind of came over and started doing the Southern Soul thing, like Vic Allen and just Librato, a lot of different people, man. And you know, it's my life has been experienced, but probably one of the guys that I was very fond of working with and got real close to, because we lived about 5 minutes away, was Jay Blackfoot. And I used to go and sit and talk to Jay on a regular basis at his home. I got to know his family, you know, his son. He had a small son then who's actually singing now. He was about 6 years old back then, but I was real fond of Jay Blackfoot. And then when I got the opportunity to meet Bobby Bland and B.B. King and Tyrone Davis. You know, man, I was like, just had to stop and think about it. You know, I'm living like a dream, a real dream. You know, I'm actually friends and here being a part of this. You know, like just I couldn't imagine myself like for once. My friend um, Marcus and we were touring like with the Masters of Funk, and Marcus is actually the videographer and the guy that's shooting this documentary. We kind of hooked up and met each other on the Juke Joint tour. But we became best friends and we hooked up, man, started collaborating. But we went out on tour and we had to think about it, man. One day we were in the hotel and here we are sitting in the same room with Sugarfoot from the Ohio Players, who I never would have thought I would ever meet, George Clinton, and Boosie Collins, sitting there together, and George got a handful of chocolate chip cookies, eating them like he's eating a bag of potato chips, and everybody laughing and talking. And Marcus was just taking a picture. When I look back and saw those pictures, I'm like sitting there thinking, man, people would give what people would give up to be in my place.